Hello, welcome everyone to our webinar, The Automation Testing Paradox. My name is Alec McCutcheon, I'm from Unicom, and I thank you all for joining us today. Unicom is an independent global conference and training company focused on IT and business topics. Among our core focus areas are testing agile, DevOps, low-code, data and knowledge management. We're excited to be hosting this webinar, which is presented by Global App Testing, jointly with TestRail and LineTen. I welcome and thank all our panelists and speakers today who've created, I think, a highly engaging and thought-provoking agenda. They include Artem Bobrovsky, Diogo Rede, Heather Vercillo, Christoph Witzak, and John Smerek. The presentation part of this webinar will be for approximately 40 minutes. This is followed by the Q&A session, where we invite you to put your own specific questions to the panelists by using the Q&A tab on your screen. We'll endeavour to answer as many questions as possible. I will now hand over to Adam Stade from Global App Testing, who will start the proceedings. Enjoy the webinar.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited for this webinar today. I'm Adam. I work for Global App Testing. I'm going to be hosting today. We've got lots of really exciting speakers. Just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. So down in the bottom right hand of the screen, along the bottom bar, there's a little button that says Q&A. It's like two little chat icons layered on top of each other. If you want to ask a question, and it is encouraged, then that is where you should do it. If you click on it, a little chat icon pops up. It's fairly self-explanatory how it all works. In addition to a live Q&A at the end of this session, we're also going to be sending an email with all of the questions and all of the answers. So if you ask a question, we will get to it, and there are no stupid questions. The way that this webinar came to be today, it started a couple of months ago, and it was when TestRail sent us an email with some research in it that blew our mind. And we've been thinking about it ever since. So the reason that we started this webinar is that we wanted to show you that research. If we can just have the next slide, Artem. We wanted to show you that research. We wanted to tell you a little bit about how we've been thinking about that research. And we also wanted to ask you what you thought about that research. And that's why in a couple of minutes, I'm going to open a poll, which is going to touch on some of the themes that the research goes on to describe. In addition to that, we're also very lucky to have LineTen. They are a mutual customer of TestRail and Global App Testing, and they're going to be talking a little bit about their business. It's a really exciting business. It's a hospitality fulfillment startup. So we've got all of that in addition to a live panel at the end, all in 45 minutes. So we've got loads to get through today. So I'm going to start with the poll. I think it cuts to the heart of what TestRail's research talks about. And that is, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to automating tests? So I'm going to click launch on that poll. It should be in front of you right now. And I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to answer. Before I do that, there's people who will watch this webinar after the fact. I don't think it's visible to them, so I'm just going to read out the answers. The question is, what's the biggest challenge when it comes to automated tests? And the answers are not enough time to automate everything, not enough budget for additional efforts, a lack of internal skills, the fact that the product might be changing a lot and therefore tests become flaky, or a product poorly suited to automation, or another factor. And if you think another factor is important, please do put it in the Q&A, because I think it'll be really interesting for the discussion at the end. I'm going to keep that poll open for the next minute and a half while I explain what global app testing is, and then I'm going to close it and we're going to talk about it after the webinar at the end, just before the Q&A. So first, global app testing. What are we? Who are we to tell you about automating your tests? Global App Testing at its heart is a community of testers. There's 70,000 testers around the world. They sit ready to test different software products at the moment that you want to launch them from your TestRail dashboard or however else. When we set up the business 8 years ago, the business has been running. And over that time, we've been fortunate enough to work with some of the biggest and best and greatest software businesses in the world. There's Meta, there's Google, if we can have the next slide, Artem. And there's the other businesses that you can see on your screen right now, along with hundreds of others. Working really closely and consultatively with them has given us a window into how they think about their QA and how they think about these kinds of questions. So based on the understanding that we've built over that 8 years, our founders wrote, who are two very wise people and are on this call, a best-selling book. Leading Quality went to the top of the Amazon QA charts. It's got plaudits for all these amazing companies, Twitter, Slack, eBay, and many others. And that is the thought leadership acumen that we're bringing to this question. And that is why when you hear Artem start to speak in a minute, he really is the man with all the answers. So without much further ado, I am going to hand it over to Heather. I'm going to end this poll, first of all. So I'm going to share the results of the poll at the end of the webinar. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Heather. Heather is a product marketing manager at TestRail, and she is going to tell you a little bit about the research that kicked this whole thing off. Over to you now, Heather.
Yes, thank you so much, Adam. So first, I want to start off by introducing TestRail and what TestRail is for those in our audience that are maybe not as familiar. And TestRail is a test management platform that helps customers boost confidence throughout your entire testing process at scale. And we do that by helping our users increase test coverage, centralize all their testing, track test progress in real time, and create visibility for their stakeholders. And when it comes to test coverage, we really want to help teams deliver quality software that behaves exactly as it's expected to all of the time. At least that's our user's perfect world scenario, of course. But when applications in production don't always work as they should, support tickets can pile up. You can have precious development resources that are spent on hot fixes that tend to be lengthy. They can cost the company time, money, and potentially even reputation, not to mention customer churn. And so in order to avoid such risk, companies will allocate resources to test the application, assuring the application's quality before a release is shipped to customers. And to measure that quality and ensure what should be tested has been tested, teams will use TestRail to thoroughly document and accurately define foreseeable use cases, in addition to using some of the powerful built-in reporting to identify the coverage that they have and any coverage gaps that they might have. When it comes to centralizing all their testing in an effort to have a single source of truth for all of the activities, whether they're manual, whether they're automated activities, they're all housed within TestRail. So manual testers can easily design and document test cases, while their SDET or test automation counterparts can push results and testing details into the platform through an API, CLI tool, or webhooks. While some applications are mainly tested with automation, I think most of us know that most applications require both automation and manual testing, where manual testers are encouraged to flag tests that can be automated in order to increase how often those tests can be run in the future. So housing all of these activities gives QA leads and managers an opportunity to obtain a holistic view of their testing activities. And when it comes time for the execution and assessment of progress, test results need to be analyzed or to gauge the quality of a release. So we need to look at defects and ensure that they're well documented and reported quickly for fast turnaround from development until test pass. So individual workloads need to be balanced too. And as the tests are run and deadlines kind of loom ahead, our leaders want to measure progress and identify bottlenecks and take action before delays pile up. And that kind of leads us into how TestRail starts to create visibility for stakeholders, because that's a huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to QA. And we know that testers aren't the only people that are concerned about the progress and outcome of testing. We have developers that need to understand context around failed tests to understand which defects need to be fixed. We have people in roles like business analysts and product managers that frequently ask questions from testing leaders to gauge the quality and progress of a release. We have emails that might be written and meetings attended to find answers to pressing questions. And then quality leaders want to include more people earlier in the testing process to promote information sharing and faster turnaround times. So information around testing is usually broken up between stakeholders, from product requirements, test cases, test results, to defect management. And TestRail's built-in reporting and ability to schedule some of that reporting really helps create that visibility easily for your stakeholders. And if you can move to the next slide. So after all the introduction of TestRail, one of the really great things that we do is run an annual survey. And we have about 70 questions on this survey, but there was one key piece of information that we wanted to focus on when talking with GAT. So the rise of software development methodologies that require a continuous and streamlined workflow, such as Agile and DevOps, have really pushed teams to automate as much as possible. So every year, TestRail runs this research survey to gather information about the industry. And one specific finding that was very interesting revolved around automation goals. We first asked our survey participants, question 1, what percentage of your tests are currently automated versus manual? So most recently in 2020 and 2021, our respondents told us that they currently automate about 35 and 38% respectively. So we've consistently seen that respondents automate approximately 40% of their tests over the past 4 years. Then when we asked the same respondents, what percentage of your tests do you expect to automate in the next year? They told us they wanted to automate about 54% of their tests in 2020 and 56% of their tests in 21. So here we have consistently a significant higher percentage than the amount of tests that are currently automated. And more specifically, our respondents told us through the survey over the past 4 years, they want to increase their automated testing by approximately 20%. So since 2018, respondents have expected or wanted to automate over half of their tests. Compared to the percentage of tests that respondents have actually automated, this data indicates to us that they succeeded in automating approximately 20% fewer tests than expected every single year. So moving from manual to automated testing without impeding current development and testing processes requires more than just hiring an automation engineer. And we see that reaching automation goals is a struggle from this data. You have frameworks that potentially need to be built, tooling that might need to be implemented, employees have to be trained, and even more than that. So these things take time and effort. And doing all of that without compromising the quality of the software being released can be a significant undertaking. But it's doable, and this is really where the global app testing and TestRail integration gives QA teams a pretty huge advantage. And so I'm going to pass it back over now.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Perfect.
I think it's such a fascinating piece of research, because on the one hand, I think it's obviously about what teams are able to execute on and what they can do and their workflows. But on the other, I think it captures a kind of groupthink where again and again and again, people think they're going to automate more than they are. Anyway, yes, I'm going to introduce Artem now. He is the man with all of the answers, and he's going to talk through our solution to it. Artem.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adam, for the introduction. And thank you very much, Heather, for sharing the results of your survey. So what do these results tell us? So the first thing they tell us is that teams want more automation in their testing. And that makes perfect sense, right? Why wouldn't you want a robot to execute your dull, repetitive testing tasks so that you can focus more of your time and effort on more creative activities rather. So the ideal scenario that a lot of teams want to achieve is that the majority of testing is automated, and then there are some tests that are either impossible to automate or just difficult enough so that the ROI isn't really there. And yes, fine, we can execute those manually every now and then. However, what we actually see from the survey results is that there is a gap there. There are tests that could be automated, but for one reason or another are not automated. This could be because this is new functionality that hasn't yet been automated in terms of testing. Or maybe on the contrary, it's legacy functionality from since before we started investing into automation. Or maybe that it's functionality that changed sufficiently enough that the tests are now outdated and require updating. We also see that some teams struggle with flaky or otherwise unreliable tests. And these tests, again, need to be covered by manual execution to make sure we have a reliable result. So these both, they form together this automation gap that we see in the survey results. And of course, since these are not automated, we need to cover those with manual human tests, and therefore we are increasing the daily burden on the testing team. A lot of you might be familiar with this matrix that shows us the work that we're doing based on its urgency and importance. So urgency goes in the vertical scale here, and the importance across the horizontal. I will relabel the axis slightly to make it more relevant to what we're talking about. So on the vertical axis here, we're going to talk about the short-term value of the work that we're doing. So high short-term value here at the top, low short-term value here at the bottom. And across the horizontal, we're going to look at the long-term value of our activities. And if we plot our testing activities here on this chart, we can start to see where the problem comes in. So you see the manual testing that we're doing, it sits here in the top left corner of this matrix. It has high short-term value. So for example, we have a release next week, and we need to make sure that the functionality that we are releasing is actually working as expected. So the value of this testing that we're doing is really high for the short term. But once that release is out and we move beyond it, the long-term value of the testing that we just completed goes down pretty much to zero. Next time we need to release something, we need to repeat that manual testing over again. And the automation here sits pretty much in the opposite side of the spectrum here. Its short-term value is pretty low when we're investing into more automation. If you have a release next week, it's much more efficient to test things manually than it is to write automated tests. However, over the long term, as we execute those tests over and over again, we start to see the return on the investment of effort of creating those tests and maintaining them. So over the long term, automation has higher value than manual testing. And actually, as humans, we tend to often prioritize the short term because the value of it is so much nearer to us and so much clearer that it makes more sense for us to spend time here because the reward is going to come very shortly. When we actually add the additional testing that comes from the automation gap, the problem becomes even worse. So the volume of testing that we need to execute manually is greater, and therefore we spend even more time in this short term, having less time available for automation. So we move from focusing on the long term to the short term. We move from being proactive to being reactive on the latest, most urgent need, and from making steady progress to where we want to be with automation to maintaining the status quo. So if you imagine yourself here on the left at your current state and where you want to be here on your right, and this is the path to get there, every time you get distracted from this path for something like a manual test run, your path to get to your automation goal becomes longer. And the more often you do it, the longer that path is going to take. And remember, these goals are not static even. They move as we progress with developing more and more functionality. So it becomes almost a constant game of catch up. So we want to achieve this goal, but it moves away further as we progress towards it. And it's like this famous parable of, I don't have time to sharpen my saw because I'm too busy sewing. So what is the solution to this problem? So one potential solution could be to delegate your short-term testing needs so that you can spend more time in this longer-term value quadrants. And you can delegate your short-term testing to global app testing. Global app testing is a community of freelance testers all around the world. We provide on-demand manual testing anytime you need it, including overnight and on weekends. We offer test case execution and exploratory testing, and we deliver results directly into TestRail and your issue tracker, whether it's Jira or some other issue tracker. Our ambition is to make manual testing feel like automation. So it plugs right into the tools that you're using, and you can trigger it from your build pipelines. It's fast and it's scalable, and it is working when you are not. And you receive the results and process the results in a unified way. So with that, I'd like to pass over to Diogo, who's the solution architect at TestRail, to take us through the details of the integration.
Hey, thanks for the introduction, Artem. So let's dig deeper into the details of the actual integration and what people can expect from it. So on this slide, what we're looking at here is a diagram of the fully integrated workflow between TestRail and global app testing. What you get with this seamless integration is a centralized workflow that allows you to request on-demand testing at any time straight from TestRail. So what you do is you start by building up your test coverage within TestRail and planning your test runs to maximize your efficiency. And then as soon as you're done planning any test run, you can schedule it to be executed through global app testing just at the click of a button right on TestRail. So with thousands of testers working around the clock on global app testing, you can launch hundreds of tests simultaneously, and you'll start getting the results and uncovering issues in your application like almost immediately. So these results are reported to TestRail, which centralizes all information and enables visibility across your organization with real-time progress, and then allows you to also report on that in a non-real-time fashion as well. So while the results are coming in, you'll be able to see the details on TestRail, and the integration also allows you to go from there to global app testing through links. So you can check useful test evidence, such as, for instance, screen recordings the testers from global app testing may have done. And then when the results are all in, you can manage them as you would manage any test data in TestRail. So you can take action on those results, you can generate valuable reports and insights, you can integrate with your issue tracker, report effects from TestRail, etc. So everything is in sync. And next slide, please. Okay, so summing up some of the key points about the integration. So it seamlessly launches tests and quickly receives results in TestRail. So the whole process is streamlined through TestRail. And then with professional testers available around the clock, you'll have your results delivered to you in no time, and this will help you scale up testing very efficiently. Then ultimately, this will allow you to release your resources to focus on bulking your test automation. And this is very important because from my personal experience as a test automation team lead, one of the biggest challenges teams face when trying to build up on automation is that testers are usually completely overwhelmed with manual testing, because a lot of times you plan to do something, but then things may derail, you may need to retest, etc. And that takes a lot longer than you expect. And that prevents them from investing time in planning and developing test automation, as well as improving their automation skills, which they may also lack. And so having global app testing at the distance of a click in your TestRail instance will definitely help your testers find the time they need to invest in automation and be successful at it. And now back to you, Artem. Show us how this all works in practice.
Thank you very much, Diogo. And yes, indeed, let's actually try and launch a test and see how it works. So what you'll see in front of you is maybe familiar to the majority of you. It's a TestRail instance that I have here up and running with a project, and I'm looking at the test cases page here. So in my project, I have a set of test cases, a pretty simple set of test cases across a couple of sections. The test cases are just a set of instructions with the expected results, fairly simple, really. So in this demo project, I would like to demonstrate you how you can launch a test with global app testing. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the test run section here and create a test run. So I need to provide some basic details here. So let's name this test something like, let's say, regression test, build such and such, put in some description. In this case, let me put in the staging URL. So this will be the URL of the application that I would like our testers to test. And then I will include all the test cases in my project and create the test run right there. So now I've created a test run, and this can be my dashboard, my homepage for the execution of this testing run. I can see the results, I can monitor the progress, and I can manage the execution by assigning these test cases to specific testers on my team and watch them report the results through TestRail. But I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to delegate this test to global app testing. So here on the right-hand side, we see the global app testing side panel with the launch this test button. And if I click it, I will go to the UI of global app testing platform. And due to the integration that is already set up between TestRail and global app testing, I can see that on this confirmation, I see the details of the test, the name, how many test cases it includes, the description. Just need to provide some additional information. In this case, I don't need any credentials or resources, and I'm ready to confirm the launch. And once I do that, just in a couple of seconds, I will see that the test has been successfully launched, and the testers will now receive this request and start testing. So while they're doing that, we will come back to our presentation here. And here I'd like to pass over to John Smerick, the CTO of LineTen. LineTen is a joint customer of both Global App Testing and TestRail. And John will tell us the experience of using both. Over to you, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Artem. I'm a little bit challenged with internet connectivity. So if I actually put my video off once in a while, that's where that's coming from. So excuse me for that. I'm at Spaces and it's not a very good connection today. But I've just launched, just to add what Artem said, I've just launched, my team has just launched basically a global app testing of over 150 test cases for a major enterprise that wants to actually validate UAT that we're actually trying to launch this quarter. So it actually is a very powerful technique. So we're just in the process of that, scrambling to make this webinar at the same time. So I thought that was very appropriate. We've had some challenges, right, at LineTen here. Our first major challenge was LineTen was faced with a perfect storm in terms of testing. We literally had 6 different products in various stages, all coming together in a common completion date. All different customers. Some had multiple versions of the same application, but the volume of work, especially the testing, exceeded our current capacity. And so that's when I looked around and identified crowd testing as one of those key things that we need to do. We couldn't automate it. We didn't have enough time. We didn't have enough testers. So there was an immediate need to ramp up testing to keep pace with development. And that allowed LineTen to test in volume as development was completed. It also enabled us to actually do all the testing after hours overnight, right, which was key because we'd hit the ground running at 8, 9 a.m. in the morning of all the defects, if there were any, with very, very detailed videos of what those defects were right in TestRail, which I think is an extremely important part because there's not a lot of going back and forth. Look at the video. Yeah, I see the problem. I fixed it. So it was a huge boon for us, right? So that was our first challenge. It was the all the perfect storm of testing. Challenge 2, our e-commerce platform. We've got basically two groups of platforms here, e-com and delivery. But on e-com, we need to test across the various platforms, not just in the UK, but right across Europe and Hong Kong and Australia and Canada, right? So the different browsers, language, iOS, Android, we have access to the browsers. I think everybody does. But the different devices that people use with e-com, especially in fast food, is where we're actually targeting. 80 to 90% of all your transactions or store's transactions are on a phone, right? So it's key that those are tested, right? And the different variations of those phones, like the last 3 or 4 variations. So that was a key thing for us. We did not have the budget to actually buy all those different devices. So that allowed testing across all the platforms. We just specified in the test runs which ones we actually wanted tested. For each test, a did this exact same thing 2 or 3 times for a test on Android or iOS or the web browser. And we've got all those different results. It was quite interesting results because, you know, one web browser or even on Safari, iOS would act a little bit different, right? So that was a key thing. That was a great challenge for challenge 2. Challenge 3, smoke testing a complex product, right? LineTen has a complex e-commerce platform where the core development may affect multiple independent clients. This is not something you would purposely design in, but I think most companies quickly got into these type of problems when they're startups. They build, they make changes, there's tech debt. And so changing a particular function for one enterprise client may affect another client that had nothing to do with that functionality. Not a great place to be in, but it's reality. So smoke testing, when we actually released for one client, we were able to do 3 or 4 clients at the same time, which was you know, volume again, which is great for us. So that was a great challenge that it got met. Our next challenge, challenge 4, had limited feedback from customers. Right, usability improvements to the flow, etc. So we actually asked GAT to do a few basically exploratory tests and to give us feedback on what they felt the flow of a particular e-com or delivery platform, in this particular case, felt like from a customer point of view. Right, largely when you're in product and you do product development, you get this back from your clients and your customers, but you have to have something out there. GAT gave us a really good way of getting a lot of feedback from actual users on different devices and web browsers very quickly. I think it's one of those hidden gems that actually GAT brings that you just don't, they just don't probably advertise as much, but it was a great thing for us. So, and then finally, my last one is challenge 5, right? Lots of products working together. One of our products on the e-commerce side integrates with a aggregation platform that puts together a lot of POS integrations with marketplace integrations like Uber Eats, Deliveroo, with basically a menu program and an order program. It puts it all together and very complex. Right. So one of the things, one of the challenges we actually had for GAT was like, look, this is very complex. It's a manual process. We have to set up our marketplaces. We have to set up our delivery places. We have to set up our e-com. You know, the tester does this. Our testers would normally do this. We'd have to put the payloads. This is the transaction I want to follow the way through. The challenge to GAT was, can your testers do that? And the result was, yeah, they can. Right, a very astute crowd. What we did was we videotaped. We set up a little seminar with them, meeting with them. We videotaped. One of our testers took them through it. We recorded it, and that's pretty much all we had to do. And they were off to the races, and they were able to test. So if anybody says that you know, crowd testing can't do complex testing, yes, they can. Right, so that was a huge benefit for us as well. There is one more challenge. I know I only had 5, but there is one more challenge that we do have is a lot of our enterprise customers today are actually asking for validated UAT. And that validated UAT is one of these key things. Not every enterprise customer will ask for this, but all enterprise customers do some sort of manual testing. What they want from us is, here's a list of our test scripts, validation that they've been tested, along with the videos that they've been tested. And so that's another added benefit that we're actually kicked off today, like 5 minutes before this meeting started, for one of our enterprise customers. So it's another win with GAT.
Fantastic. Is that all, John?
Yeah, sorry, I kind of ended it abruptly, but is there any questions on what we've done and we found at LineTen?
Thank you so much, John. That's great. If you do have questions for John, just stick them in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end or during as well. But yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you so much. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Artem, it's time to actually get some results back.
And indeed, you are not mistaken. So the testers had some time to execute the test cases. So let's look at the results. I'm back here in the TestRail interface, the same test run dashboard, and you can see it looks a little different because we now have results. We have 5 passed test cases, 1 failed test cases, everything's tested. So if I just scroll down to the individual test cases, I will see the results of those test cases here, which ones are passed or which ones are failed. And I can click into each individual test case, scroll down to the results section, and see the details of the execution of each test case. So what you'll see here is there's this result from tester number 1, which marks the test case result as passed. But we also have 2 more confirmations from 2 other testers of this passing result. So this is very important. We never give you just one result of a test case. We always provide you with multiple executions of the same test case so that even if one tester makes a mistake and submits an invalid result, there are other testers who can retest this and confirm or indeed change the result. So in this case, you can see each of the tester results, and I have a link here. If I click this, I'll get taken to the global app testing interface, where I can see the details of this particular test case execution, including, like John said, a video of the entire process of tester going through those steps and observing the results and recording them. So that was a passing test case. We also had 1 failing test case right here at the bottom. So if I enter the failing test case, we see the same situation here. We have the first tester reporting it as a failed result, and we have 2 more testers to confirm this result. And in addition to the link, I can also see what is the exact problem. The delete button is available on recipes that are created by other users. So if I click into this result, again, I get taken to the global app testing platform where I can see the details of the execution, where particularly this this test case failed, what was the actual result versus expected, and again, a video demonstrating the entire execution process and the actual problem that's being reported, so you can investigate it and fix it. So hopefully this makes sense, and you can see now how in the same interface, this test run dashboard on TestRail, you can integrate all of your kinds of testing together and monitor the progress and the results of all of those kinds of testing together. Internal manual testing, external manual testing through global app testing, and also your automation. So this becomes really powerful.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you for a great webinar. We're going to move now to Q&A. And just before we do that, I'd like to again thank Artem and invite him to share the poll results.
Great. So let's have a look at the poll results. Good. So what I can see, I don't know if you can see the poll results. Hopefully you can, the audience can see the poll results as well as I can. We can see that the top reply is not enough time to automate everything. Just a reminder, the question was, what's the biggest challenge when it comes to automated tests? And the top reply, pretty unsurprisingly, is not enough time to automate everything. I think that's natural for like any team out there. You have to prioritize where you spend your time, and with the short-term needs often overpowering the long-term investment into automated tests, it's just an environment in which there's always not enough time to automate everything. So as I mentioned before, one possible solution to this would be delegating the short-term testing that is required for next week's release to global app testing, so that you have more time to invest in the automation. The second most popular reply is product is changing, tests become flaky, and again, This is very true for many teams. And there are some technical solutions to this whereby changing how you write the tests and what tools you use to write tests, you can lower the maintenance cost of keeping those tests up to date. But again, it can only take you so far. You need to invest that time in the longer term ROI of benefiting from those automated tests. And yes, we have other responses that are a little bit less in popularity. What do you think about this, Christoph?
Yes, like especially to the flakiness aspect, like you've mentioned, that we can improve the way how we write those tests, and that can, move us so far. We had a similar journey in global app testing as well. We've used to write our tests in Selenium. I believe that most of you have heard about this technology, of course. And then we've moved to Playwright, which is a fresh technology, way better, way easier for us to write tests there. But indeed, like flakiness is a smaller problem, but it's not entirely gone. Absolutely not. It still happens.
Thank you very much, Christoph. And I was wondering if Heather, Diogo, you have anything to add in terms of commenting these results?
Well, I can speak to it as well. I mean, most of my career, I've been working in test automation. I was the lead of a test automation team in a big company. And yeah, we always lose a lot of time, especially with flaky tests in maintenance. It's a big headache when things start failing and you can't even trust your automation suite. So that's when you really need the help of some people to actually step in and manually test everything. So yeah, unfortunately, it's still quite common. There are ways to improve, and we should always strive to improve our test automation suites. But yeah, I can see myself in these situations.
Thank you very much, Diogo. And yes, if you want to try out global app testing and TestRail as a solution to these challenges, there's a link that was posted to the chat just now, and you can follow that to go to a page where you can sign up for free trial for global app testing, for TestRail, or both, which is the power combination. And yes, I think that we can say that we've commented the poll results, Alec.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much indeed. I think we'll move on to Q&A. We've got a little bit of time. I can see questions coming in already, so I'll start firing them off to the panel. I'll read them out. So just a reminder, if you can please type them in the Q&A tab, and then we'll take them from there. So first question is, hi, I am wondering whether GAT is able to test even some industry-specific software where there's some assumption for knowledge needed. Or does it rely fully on detailed test case description that would not be needed with some knowledge, e.g. Required explanation of calculation for normalized standard deviation?
I love that question. Brilliant example. Yes, so it is a common challenge of knowledge assumption in the test requirements. So when we write test cases, we can't expect that the tester that will be executing this test case will have the same level of knowledge as your team does. However, one solution you highlighted yourself is in the test case description or the test case steps, be a little bit more specific around, well, if you input these numbers, you get this standard deviation, right? And then you don't assume the knowledge of what a standard deviation is. And another solution that our customers use all the time is briefing information. So before a tester begins testing the application, they get familiarized with some briefing information about the system, about some domain knowledge that you can share there. I wouldn't probably suggest you share kind of technical or even mathematical, in this case, skills through that briefing and expect them to now know how to calculate the standard deviation properly. And but some of the basic terminology of your software, of your industry, of your domain, how things work, how the application works, what's been pretty popular and and it works great is if you have a demo of your application that where you show the main parts, and then testers, when they look at that demo, they can understand the context within which they're testing, and then when they look at the test cases, they suddenly make a lot more sense. So that would be my response to it. But there's also another aspect that I just remembered to mention, is that there are targeting capabilities. So since global app testing has a wide range of testers available all across the globe, some of them can actually have the industry knowledge that you're looking for. So with a certain service type, you can target just the testers that have this knowledge and these skills, and this would be possible solution to your problem. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. I've got another question just come in for the panel, and it is, if I already have automated tests in, say, a Ruby or Cypress framework, can those results be integrated into the overall view that TestRail provides?
Yeah, I can take that one. So yeah, definitely. One of some of the work we've been doing lately in TestRail revolves around integration with test automation frameworks. And since last year, we have available our CLI tool. We call it the TestRail CLI. It's an open source project. You can even fiddle with it and everything. And the goal is to integrate those results. So you do mention Ruby and Cypress. So for Ruby, I guess it would depend on the framework you are using with Ruby. There are different test frameworks that are able to generate different sorts of results. For Cypress, we already have documentation on how to do that because the TestRail CLI integrates with JUnit style reports, and a lot of frameworks generate those sorts of reports. So if you have a framework that generates that file, which is just an XML file with a standard format, by the end of your test runs, you are able to use the CLI tool, and in just one line in your command line, you can send in the results, you can add custom results fields, you can add a description to your test run, you can do a couple of things. Also, it also automatically creates your test cases and is able to map the cases in the next runs you execute. So yeah, you can definitely do that, and you can take advantage of having everything in TestRail and report both your manual and automated test results all straight from TestRail. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Diogo. So there's a few questions now coming in. The next question is, automated test written in Playwright and Cypress behaves differently when they are executed in headless modes like GIT pipelines. How global app testing thinks about the result confliction in frameworks and headless modes?
Interesting question. Maybe I can attempt to solve this, and then Artem, if you will have some ideas, you can join in. So yeah, very interesting question. What I can say here is that in global app testing, our testers, they use real devices when they perform any kind of a testing, which means that, they can actually tell you if your flackiness is real, like if you have a real problem or not. And I understand you might have automation which is already in place, but you might experience some specific problems in specific cases. In that case, it wouldn't be necessary to repeat the entire test with us, because we offer a feature which is called repro tests. And what it means is that you can maybe potentially extract this small piece which seems to fail only in, for example, headless mode, when you are not certain which result is right, and that will be like a minimal atomic thing that you want to check on a real device with us. And then you can even use our API or anything to very quickly and easily launch it. I don't know, Artem, if you would like to add anything to that.
The only thing I'd like to add is just to make sure that you understand that global app testing provides manual testing. So we ourselves don't use any headless modes because testers will need the user interface to test your application through. And as Christoph highlighted, if you're experiencing problems with that flakiness difference depending on the type of testing, you can run some testing with us to verify which is it that is correct.
Thank you. So I've got another question that's coming from Sandeep. This question is, does it support both web and mobile? What about API automation?
Okay, this one I like as well, so I would try to do two in the strike. So indeed, yes, we support web and mobile, and for web, it's quite obvious that you can like share the app through the link or maybe provide us with credentials if necessary. For mobiles, it might be a different story because like sharing of a mobile application is not that obvious. We often use a test flight for iOS devices to publish the build, and also we use Google Store Beta as well for this case. These two tools are pretty cool because they are like very easy to distribute for the testers and for us. And additionally, they have like extra features. For example, they have sandbox payment modes, which means that you can try payments, how they work and so on, and people like won't be like necessarily charged. If you don't want to use these two, we can also like just accept just your builds as a raw files. We can also do that. It's like, harder on our side, but nothing is impossible. And about the question on API automation, well, we have API. Recently, it was actually even refreshed. So you can like build on top of it. We also have webhooks. And yeah, probably it was all about this. I don't think that by this question you've meant, for example, if we are testing API itself, because in that case, this is not our like core service or specialty. Once again, we can do this after some conversations, but this is not like our main service that we offer. I hope that solves the question.
Thank you. So I've got another question. This one is from Pallavi. In comparison with Lambda, what extra capabilities TestRail can provide if integrated with, suppose, Playwright for reporting purposes?
So I can try to tackle this one. Actually, I'm not sure what you're referring by with Lambda. Maybe Lambda test, I'm assuming here. That's the closest I know to Lambda. Well, Lambda test is more of a device farm or an execution platform. TestRail is a test management platform. So the goal and okay, thank you. Now it's clear. Yeah. So the goal, the proposition of these platforms is different. So TestRail is used to manage and streamline your testing workflows. It's not directly related to automation. What we offer are capabilities to integrate your test results and manage your test results inside TestRail. So you can do that through our API using the CLI, like I mentioned, etc. And that allows you to manage everything. Imagine executing those tests, those automated tests against Lambda tests. So they would run on Lambda tests. And by the end, you would send the results to TestRail and you would manage all the results in TestRail. So they have different propositions, they have different purposes, and you can combine all of these together. For instance, I can also give you an example of a Lambda test competitor, which is Sauce Labs. Right now, we have an integration with we promote an integration with between our CLI and their CLI. They have a CLI tool which executes things in Sauce Labs. So you can, for instance, start a Cypress project and it will be executed through their CLI. And it generates a JUnit report with links to the execution. And we import those links to TestRail. So in each test case, you have the result and you have a link to the execution on their side. So yeah, this can be all put to work together. So it's not exactly a competitor, let's put it that way. I hope this helps.
Yeah. And to add on to that, I think one thing that we tend to see anymore is teams can have 5+ tools that they might use anymore. And so the big benefit of TestRail is that's going to centralize all of those results, like Diogo mentioned. And within TestRail, then we have a set of built-in reporting that you can then use to report on one or more or all of those results within a single report so that you can get that whole entire view of your testing activities, your testing progress, results.
Thanks. So I'm just looking down at the other questions that are coming in. Next one is, how can a crowd testing team understand my product well enough that it won't be a problem during the testing process? So good question.
I think it's very similar to the first question that we received about industry knowledge or technical knowledge and skills. The answer is basically the same. So you have two ways of addressing that. One is through clarity of test cases, and two is through briefing materials. If you want me to elaborate, right under the question, I'll go into further detail, but I think it's pretty much well covered from the first question.
Okay, thank you. We've got quite a lot of questions coming in. I'm just conscious of running a little bit close to time, but if I can read out a few more. The next one is, how do TestRail and GAT integrate with other tools?
So, I mean, I think any one of us can take this one. I guess I'll start from the TestRail side. So other tools, the most significant integration I can see here, considering we are using GAT and TestRail together, is our defects and requirements integration with issue trackers. So imagine the use case where you have your GAT testers reporting to TestRail, and then maybe you want to do a triage before sending in your bugs to your issue tracker. You can actually integrate with the Jira, with the GitHub, etc. We cover most of the big issue trackers, and you can push bugs directly from TestRail to these issue trackers. We also provide the reports on coverage, user story or requirements coverage. And then for any other custom integrations, we have a powerful API you can use for basically anything to manage all your test entities in TestRail.
Thanks.
I can do like a really quick one for global app testing as well.
Please.
Same as TestRail, we have API, web API, and webhooks to provide any custom integration. And we have out-of-the-box integrations with tools like TestRail, with CI/CD systems, with Jira and GitHub for issues, and other systems. You can check the full list on our website.
Thank you. And just another quick question. I guess it's kind of related. How do we integrate global app testing onto the TestRail? So
this, you don't need to do much because this integration comes out of the box. So if you have both tools, we have a short guide that you need to follow to set up the actual integration, and then it works. And there's a description on how it works. So if you have both systems and you can't figure it out, just let us know. We'll definitely help you set it up.
Thank you. I think we've got time for just one more question. Is it possible to have visibility into the test results of global app testing in TestRail? What types of reports can I generate?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and take this one. So I think maybe it was Artem during your section that you covered this, but you can definitely see those results within TestRail, because TestRail is acting as your single source of truth for all of your testing results, whether it's with GAT or you have other integrations with the platform. But when it comes to reporting on those results, there are a number of built-in reports within TestRail to make that really easy for you. And you can cover information like traceability, coverage, just general status of the testing. So if you're looking for information on your test result statuses, you can find that. You can compare information from one test run to another, from one project to another within TestRail, using some live in real-time charts that are in the platform as well. So there's really a lot of different pieces of information that you can gather for the GAT integration, other tools that you might be using, and be able to compile all of that within TestRail to then report out on it. We have approximately 15 or so built-in reports that can be used.
Thanks, Heather. Well, thank you, everybody. I think we've come absolutely spot on time. So thank you for taking part today, and massive thank you to our presenters and panelists. It's been a really good fast hour. Sorry we didn't get to answer everybody's question. I can see there's still a lot more in the chat. What we'd suggested, if you do have any questions that we haven't answered, please do drop us an email. We'll follow up with you afterwards, but feel free to email the questions and we'll forward those on to the panelists. And again, thank you very much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.